see.
Oh, you're fine.
All right. Let's see. Getting there. Exam 2, 3. Sorry for the wait. I should have had this.
Oh, you're fine.
Should have had it pulled up.
You're good.
Okay, come on. My computer's just being very, very slow. Come on. Come on. Oh, we're getting somewhere. Again, sorry for the wait.
You're fine. Gotta love the internet.
Yeah. Usually it's better at school than it is at my house, but sometimes this is what happens. All right. Module 6, exam 3. Let's see. Grades, that would help, I think. Okay, is his last name? Gerald. Of course, it's not in alphabetical order. I'm telling you. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Almost there. All right. Review attempt. Oh, if it could open, would be all right. There we go. Okay. So let me turn this off. Let me just pull this up. Just something to look at while we talk.
Okay.
So here we go. Let's look at these questions here. First one we'll talk about that you missed. Okay. One of the questions asks about ecological ramifications of global warming. Let's see here. Yeah, and it asks which. Yeah, so yeah, you're supposed to choose which one is an ecological ramification of global warming. And the biggest thing, at least the way of the choices you had, the biggest one is that the correct answer, anyway, is that things don't have a chance to move quick enough to a habitat that's good for them. You know what I mean? Like otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem. As things get warmer, you could say things that are adapted to cold weather could just move farther north or move to a higher latitude, get to a colder spot. But because the problem with global warming happening too quickly is that there's not enough time for populations of plants and animals to move there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And your choice was habitats of animals and plants will decrease in the area because farmland may get destroyed. And you weren't completely off because one of the ramifications of global warming is that some farmland could get destroyed as the climate changes. It could be one area that used to be suitable for growing stuff could not be suitable. So that could happen. But
Just not in this case.
exactly. And then, or more importantly, I guess you could say that was too specific. And also the beginning of that sentence, of the incorrect sentence, says the habitats of the animals and plants will increase in area. So, I mean, and you could argue that would happen because you could argue that as farmland gets destroyed, that maybe it's replaced by a more natural habitat, but that's just too specific, I guess. So yeah, like I said, the correct answer is that plants and animals, they couldn't move quick enough to a suitable habitat. And I'm looking at these other options since I'm giving you feedback anyway, and trying to see if there's any at least worth mentioning. Like one of them's completely wrong, obviously, which says that there would be no ramifications. Yeah, so yeah, that's the correct answer. So is there any questions about that one?
No.
All right. Excuse me. The next one. Let's see. Okay, the next question is about a watershed. And I was being specific in the question. I gave some specific examples, but basically, yeah, you needed to know the different types of watersheds, and you need to know one where, let's see, the one that kind of flows into like an ocean, or a gulf or something like that. And the answer is open. It's an open watershed because basically you have open or closed. So, for example, a river that dumped into a lake and that was it, that would be a closed watershed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, your description, because you chose large as your answer, that is a correct description when you think about it. If you're just thinking about adjectives, it is large. But according to the book, those are your two choices. Your two real choices are either open or closed. And in that case, the answer is open because it does not go into a lake. It goes into the ocean, basically. So any questions about that one?
No, because I think I read it opposite of in my head.
Okay. All right. The next one, it gives a bunch of statements, and you have to choose the one that is the most correct. And this one is about pollutants. And some of the options, some of the types of pollutants, we're talking about man-made pollutants. We're talking about secondary pollutants, tertiary pollutants, natural pollutants, primary pollutants. And the correct answer, I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to give you the correct answer and then try to figure out how to explain the rest of the.
Yeah, because that one, like, how do you find that? Because I think I have issues with that anyways. Like, how do you even find out which one is really true?
Right. Well, the correct answer was that primary pollutants are particles or chemicals that are directly emitted from an identifiable source. So, for example, when you start your car, if you see if you can actually see the smoke, of course, you don't need to see it for it to be true, but if you can see the smoke coming out of the tailpipe, that is a primary pollutant. Like, where it's coming from. Or, if you drive past John Amos and you can see the smoke coming out of the smokestack, that's primary. You can see where it comes from. So, for example, one of the other options that was an incorrect one was secondary pollutants are particles or chemicals that are directly emitted from identifiable sources. So, in that case, it was the same sentence except the wrong word, because, again, the correct answer is primary, but that one said secondary. And if I remember correctly, and I hope I'm not wrong. I feel so embarrassed if I am, but if I remember correctly, your book doesn't mention anything about tertiary pollutants. So yeah, those were all basically. That was all of it. Every single option said basically blank are particles or chemicals that are directly emitted from identifiable sources. So yeah, your choices were basically man-made, secondary, tertiary, natural, or primary. So there you go. At least you were on the right track, like choosing one that had to do with primary or secondary or tertiary. So you were on the right track. But again, the answer is primary. If you can identify where it comes from, it's primary. All right. So any questions about that one?
No, but so basically I'm just looking at the definitions of
Exactly
what each one is. Okay.
Exactly. And a better way of writing that would have been, which of the following are particles or chemicals that are directly emitted from identifiable sources? And then the choices could have just been man-made, secondary, tertiary, natural, or primary. But again, I know people have been cheating, so I've had to reword the questions and check it with this app that I have to make sure that when you take a picture of it, the answer doesn't come up. So that is why that one was worded the way it was. All right, let's see the next one. So this one's talking about pesticides. Basically, like, all right, what kind of pesticide is the best pesticide when it comes to environmental biology? And the answer is, of the choices anyway, there's a few things you would look for that I'm sure you can find in the book. But of the ones that were listed, the answer is you want something that would not leach into the water supply. Um, yeah, and of course,
Yeah,
like your
like
answer,
those.
wasn't like your answer makes sense because you said equal value to the damage the pest would have caused. I could see where you're coming from because you're like, well, if I'm going to spend money on a pest on a insecticide, I want to make sure that I'm not spending more money than those pests are costing me, and that is
Right.
economically that makes sense. But when it comes to um, environmental biology, that the answer was, water not leaching into the ground. Anyway, any questions about that one?
No.
All right, let's see. The next one is okay. Basically, the next one asks what acid rain is an example of. Um, and usually that's a tough question in a way because I think most of us have probably grown up hearing the term acid rain, and you know what acid rain is. But it turns out that acid rain, that word is actually a little bit too specific because the real word incorporates other things like acid snow, for example. So the answer is wet deposition.
Nothing I put dry.
Actually, you put aerosol.
Oh.
So, it's okay. That's one of those tough ones. I think, again, most people probably know what acid rain is, but we're just not used to that word, wet deposition. But yeah, that is the correct term. So, any questions about that one?
No. Because even when I went read on it, I mean, I think after I read, went and looked at the book and read about it, I don't think I still. I don't think it gave a different name too in the book.
Oh, well, that being said, I reminded the last person that I did this with. If that is true, look in the book, um, get back to
Yeah, it
me.
was called something else. I can't remember. It was acid, but it didn't say rain. It was something else.
Yeah. Well, if you find it, let me know. Let me know what page it's on, and then if you're correct, then I'll just give you the answer or give you the points. But if I remember correctly, it definitely should say wet deposition, but who knows? So let me know if you find something different. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. The next question is talking about climate change and about how people debate it. Like, is climate change real or not? Um, and oftentimes in that debate, they kind of leave out the differences between natural climate change and human influence climate change, because there is natural climate change. Things do happen naturally, but there's also human influenced um, climate change. So if we're talking about natural climate change and not the other one, then the question is asking what causes it? What causes natural climate change? And oh yeah, so it was a list. So obviously there's not one cause of natural climate change, but there's a list of things, and the choices on the exam are a list of things that are not causes of natural climate change, and one of them is, and the answer is volcanoes. So volcanoes can change the climate naturally. Um, and you chose tornadoes, so which makes me wonder if maybe perhaps you misread the question and thought, what does natural climate change, I don't know, cause?
Yeah, I
Instead of
think
what causes it, what does it cause? Because climate change, whether natural or not, could indeed cause tornadoes. So that's probably what happened there. But again,
I think I misread them.
yeah, it's all right. It happens, especially when you have only 50 minutes to take the exam. I could see that. Which is a good time to remind you and anybody who might happen to watch this video, if you want to take a longer exam, we'll just find a time to meet me online and we can work that out. But anyway, let's move to the next one. Let's see. This one's about natural greenhouse gases. Um, and the question wants to know which of the following, so it gives a list, which of the following is the least abundant natural greenhouse gas? And the answer is methane. Of all the things that were listed, it was methane. Um, And I will
Yeah,
say
I think I chose nitrogen.
you did. I think I was wondering maybe if that was another one you misread and saw the word abundant, because nitrogen is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere. It's like 80% of the atmosphere about. So maybe that's what you were thinking. But yeah, so the answer was methane. And again, I don't want to go through all the choices because I don't want to give the exam away on a video. But
I got you.
yeah, of the ones that were listed, it was methane. But for anybody studying for the exam, you could just go to the book and look at all the different natural greenhouse gases and find, try to memorize them in order of their abundance. Excuse me. All right, next one. Let's see. For some reason, so this one's this one's about sea level rise. Okay. So this one's basically like saying which of the following is an issue that is caused by sea level rise. And the answer was eroding shorelines in coastal areas. Um, yeah, that's the answer. I'm trying to look at. So you chose deforestation as salt in the atmosphere increases, and I don't remember for sure, but I don't think your book mentioned anything necessarily about salt in the atmosphere increasing with sea level rise, because as far as I remember, your book specifically just addresses the water rising, not necessarily anything to do with the atmosphere around it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like some of the other choices, one of the wrong choices was migrating birds as salt in the atmosphere increases. Um, so again, that goes back to that salt in the atmosphere thing, but also generally speaking, you're not too worried about migrating birds because
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
want
because that one I knew
to. Yeah,
was wrong. I said, no, I don't. Yeah, I know it ain't the birds.
yeah. All right, so move on to the next one. Excuse me. All right, this one's talking about the things that dams provide, and it's a list of things that are not provided by dams, and you have to choose the one that is. And the answer was renewable energy. And of course, like I said, for anybody studying, you're going to look. The dams provide quite a few things, so make sure you understand and maybe memorize all the things that a dam provides. Um, yeah, and you chose stabilization for migrating fish to reproduce, which is interesting because in that case, that was actually the opposite of true. That's one of the bad things about dams is they usually negatively affect migrating fish, and it definitely doesn't stabilize things for them. It makes it harder, if not impossible. So, any questions about that one?
No.
All right, the next one. This one's about sustainable agriculture. The goals of sustainable agriculture. So, yes, yeah. So it lists a bunch of things, and you're supposed to choose the one that's sort of like a one of the goals of or functions, if you will, of sustainable agriculture. And the answer is to produce or to maintain productive topsoil. And again, it's a list of things that are not, and you choose the one that is. And in this case, that is the answer to maintain productive topsoil. And you chose how to increase the use of fertilizers. And I guess the reason that is the wrong answer, or why that was even included, is because in a perfect world, you don't want to necessarily increase the use of fertilizers, especially now that we've done that whole thing about water pollution and eutrophication. You understand there's a negative consequences to doing that, to increasing the use of fertilizer, and that's not necessarily sustainable. So the best thing, if you could somehow maintain a productive topsoil without using fertilizers, or definitely without increasing the use of fertilizers, then that would be more sustainable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, for anybody watching this and studying for it, just remember you're going to want to know basically all the goals of sustainable agriculture. All right, let's see which. Okay, this next one's about aquatic dead zones. and it's saying like, what's something you would find in an aquatic dead zone? So it gives a list of things you wouldn't find and one thing that you would. And the answer is a low concentration of oxygen. Your choice was a low concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus. And what happens is it's actually that high concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus that kind of leads to algae blooms, and then those algae die, and then the bacteria eat the dead algae, or eat, I don't know if you want to use that word, decompose the dead algae, whatever. And because of that, when that happens, that depletes the oxygen level. So that's why the answer is a low concentration of oxygen. Now, granted, if I were to reword the exam, which I do on occasion, I could turn yours into the correct answer by rewording it, saying a high concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus nutrients, in which case it would be correct. So in your case, low is the key word for why it is incorrect. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. It's a little counterintuitive sometimes, the dead zone thing, because you think fertilizer, you think more life, but in this case,
Right.
Sometimes more life is not good for the for the ecosystem. Excuse me. All right, the next question. This one talks about things you could do to address flooding, and it gives a list of things that would be good, and then one thing that would not be good, and you had to choose the thing that would not be good. And the one thing on that list that would not be good, like to avoid flooding, would be converting meadows into agriculture areas or converting agriculture fields to residential areas. And this goes back to what we talked about in chapter 1. I think it was chapter 1, either 1 or 2, where there was a very general statement made that said basically, as humans interfere with nature, basically the worse it is. So, going from meadows to agriculture areas, that's less natural, right? So less natural is generally not good, even when it comes to flooding. And then going from agriculture to residential, even more so, less natural. Therefore, it would be an issue with flooding. And I'm thinking, based on what I'm reading here, from your answer, because you chose rain barrels, I assume maybe you misread the question. Because rain barrels should be good when it comes to avoiding floods or flooding, right? The more people have rain barrels, the less stormwater runoff you have, and therefore the less issue of flooding would be in theory. So, any questions about that one?
No.
All right. Excuse me.
Oh, you're fine.
All right. The next one. This one's all about another definition. The question provides the words, and then you choose the correct definition. And the word is anthropogenic activities. And those are activities by humans that affect the earth and its biosphere. And it's interesting, I like your answer isn't 100% off because you chose human activities that reduce carbon emissions through tax credits for reducing automobile emissions. And that's not necessarily an incorrect statement. It's just not the definition.
The right one.
It's it's one example as opposed to the definition, if that makes sense. Because yes, sometimes anthropogenic activities are beneficial for the environment, like the one you listed. If you were to give tax credits and reduce carbon emissions, that would be a good thing. But again, you gave an example, but you needed the definition. Yeah. So any questions about that one?
No.
Right. Well, this is a tough one. I've seen a lot of people miss this one. It asks for the reasons. It gives you a list of things that are not reasons, and you need to choose. Excuse me. It provides a list of things that are reasons for the origins of agriculture. Some of the things that led to the origins of agriculture, and you needed to choose the one that was not. And the answer is improved quality of human life, and that was a tough one because when agriculture did originate, that did improve the quality of human life, but the quality of human life did not lead to the origins of agriculture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like cause and effect. So yeah, that's the answer to that one. So any questions?
Professor?
Almost
Yeah.
done. And of course, this
Sorry.
is technically your meeting, so you can end it whenever you want, even if we don't get to the end. But we're getting there. The next one says, let's see. So this one's about different greenhouse gases. The least abundant natural greenhouse gas. Oh, okay. So we already talked about the least abundant natural greenhouse gas, and the next one says the most abundant. And here's the hard part: natural greenhouse gas, and the answer is water vapor. So what you chose was the most abundant gas, which is nitrogen, but that's not a greenhouse gas. So the answer is water vapor. Any
And it's
questions?
not natural.
Right. Well, it's not for this one. It's not even the natural part. The key to this one is the greenhouse gas part, at least with nitrogen.
Okay.
So, any questions about that one?
No.
All right. The next one. This one's going back to agriculture. It gives you a list of places that are things you would look for, things that are good for growing, crops. And then one of those things in the list is not good, and you're supposed to choose which one that is. And the answer is waterlogged soil. And I know that's a little bit counterintuitive because you need water, but not necessarily waterlogged, because plants can, I hate to use the word drown, but in a sense they can. If they have too much water, they can also be deprived of oxygen, and it could also be bad. So,
That is true.
yeah. Yep. So, any questions about that one?
No.
All right. Next is you needed to describe or define a word, and that word was biofuel. And that is a fuel derived from plant material. Yeah. So that one's pretty straightforward. There's not much else to say about that one. Any questions about that one?
No.
All right. This one asks. This one's about indoor air pollutants, primary indoor air pollutants, and it gives you a list of them, and you needed to choose one that was. And it says this is about developing countries as opposed to developed countries. So the answer is smoke from wood-fueled stoves. And you chose asbestos, which is a health issue, but not necessarily, definitely not from a developing country. Developing are the poorer countries where more people would be burning things inside to cook. Excuse me. Any questions about that one?
No.
All right, we're moving right along. This one's about greenhouse gases, causes, sources, smallest impact. Okay, so this one lists a bunch of things that are sources or causes, whatever, of greenhouse gases, and you needed to choose which one on that list had the least amount of impact. And the answer was disposal of waste. And you chose operation of power station. So I'm wondering then maybe if you misunderstood it, because you chose one of the larger ones, actually, one of the ones that actually produces a lot of greenhouse gas.
Well, the one you said I was going to choose that, and then I was like, no, I don't think it is.
Oh, no. Yeah, because, I think one of the tricky things about that question, now that I'm thinking about that from a student perspective, is, this is environmental biology, so we're talking about things that are bad for the environment. And disposal of waste, we definitely have a problem with disposal of waste. We've got litter, we've got things getting into the ocean, but this question specifically about greenhouse gas, so I can see how that could be tricky. Any questions about that?
No.
All right, we're down to the last three. We're talking about trends in historic global temperature. Okay, yeah. So this one's asking basically about the evidence. So obviously we can see the global temperature changes. If you talk about, the temperatures have changed this much in the last 50 years, we can do that because we've been taking accurate, precise measurements for 50 years. But this is saying, all right, what about way back in the day before there was even humans, for example? How do we have data from that? And it gives you a list of things, and you have to choose which one is actually one that you could use for data or evidence. And the answer is changes in fossils and the changes in the chemical isotopes found in the sediments and glacial ice. and you got the same one wrong that the last person I talked to and chose the same exact answer, yours would have been correct, except you put instead of saying changes in chemical isotopes, you put changes in hydrogen and oxygen isotopes. So you were just a little bit too specific. And if I remember correctly, and again, it's been a while since I read the book. Plus, data change, things change. But
Right.
if I remember correctly, hydrogen and oxygen were not one of them anyway. But anyway, yeah. So that's why you got. At least you were on the right track. You just got too specific with your answer. Any questions about that one?
No.
All right. Let's see. This one is okay. This one's asking you about the difference between perennial and annual wheat, and about the benefits of using perennial versus annual. I don't want to give away the answer. Shoot. I don't know how to say this. So the answer you chose was correct. You said there's less risk due to weather conditions when using perennial. That is a correct statement. But if you were to look at all the other options, there is a more correct statement. That's all I can say without giving away
Okay.
the answer. All right, and the next one, last one. Oh yeah, this one just is about the causes of eutrophication. We've talked about this earlier. Oh, you were on the right.
That one was. I even went back and read, and I don't think I still understand. Like everywhere I read, even when I Googled, I feel like I got so many different answers, or I just didn't understand.
Yeah, it can be tricky, but this is another one of those where I think you got the cause and effect swapped because you chose low dissolved oxygen, but a better, more accurate statement was eutrophication causes low dissolved oxygen. It's not necessarily the low dissolved oxygen that causes eutrophication. Eutrophication is caused by high levels of nutrients like the nitrogen and phosphorus that we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
That's what causes eutrophication. And then a result of eutrophication is what you chose, which was low dissolved oxygen. So you were on the right track. It's just that you got the causes and the effects swapped. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, that question or anything else, if you find something in the book, if you think it wasn't like maybe perhaps it was too ambiguous or something, feel free to find it and give me the page number and argue it. That's fine with me. At the very worst case scenario, you'll still be wrong, but
All right.
at least you
At
tried.
least I gave I gave
Yeah,
an A for effort.
and you'll learn a lot. Like when you try to defend the wrong answer, then that requires you to think more and look things up, and that's a great learning experience. So give it a shot. And best case scenario, you made a good argument, and I'd give you the credit for it, even though it's not the best answer. You might still get the credit.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's the end of that. Did you have any other questions?
No. I
All
don't
right.
think.
Then I'll
Nope.
remind you then, just shoot me an email and remind me that we had this meeting and to boost your exam grade by 10%, and I'll take care of it.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for meeting with me.
No problem. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.